Why is the sun so delicate? By Guyan copy, 1v1 He easy and no-brainer. Pace Ya dressed as the unfortunate cannon fodder in a novel of Xi Fanduan Geng, and was constantly threatened because of her pure body that was easily coveted by demons. The protagonist of the novel is Lucifer, the holy son of the of light, with a beautiful face and divine purification ability. In the story, Lucifer's beauty and ability attracted countless men, women and children to him, resulting in a series of poignant and tragic love stories. Description of the novel: Lord Seiko, with his heart-wrenching physique, is deeply distressed that he is so popular. So Pace Ya decided to become his flower protector in exchange for the fate of not being possessed by evil spirits. Only when the suitor was robbing him, Lord Saint Sun leaned weakly into Pace Ya's arms, and said pitifully, "He is so fierce, I'm afraid." When the monsters attacked, Lord Holy Sun hugged Pace Ya's waist and buried his head in his neck, shivering, "Xia, protect me." When the killer attacked, Pace Ya watched as Lord Saint Sun chopped off the killer's head with a sword. The corners of his blood-stained lips raised a charming arc, but when he saw himself, he suddenly sobbed and fainted softly. "Pace Ya! Lord Holy Sun, why don't you ever think of me wrong?" Pace Ya actually got up but was pressed down again because, crossed out, we all suffer, crossed out, my belief is very devout. Lucifer smiled slowly, "In that case, come to my room tonight and listen to the holy sound together." The fake Saint Sun, the real devil, the fake delicate thief, the fine long-haired beauty, the big boss attack, and every day I wonder why the sun is so delicate and honest. Content tags, strong and sweet text through books and Western fantasy. Search keywords: protagonist, Pace Ya, Lucifer. Supporting role, follow-up document: Why is the demon so weak? Others, one-sentence introduction: The heartthrob son loves me alone. Brief review of the work: Pace Ya has an honest character and is single for 10,000 years. After transmigrating to an unfinished Western fantasy novel, he finds that he is very easy to provoke demons. In order to save his life, he chose to become a knight of the perfect, holy, kind, and beautiful Saint Sun Lucifer, but the fascinated Saint Sun is very different from the original book. He seems to be too delicate. Moreover, Seiko-sama was also very curious about the mysterious knight who suddenly appeared. So the knight and the Holy Sun began a hilarious adventure in a different world around temptation, life-saving, and disguise. This article has a clear mind and tells the story of two diametrically opposed characters getting along with each other in different brain circuits. The characters are novel and distinct, the interaction between the protagonists is easy and interesting, the overall style of writing is easy and funny, the writing is smooth and natural, the plot is fascinating, and it is worth reading. On a sunny morning, at 7 o'clock when the sun swayed, the door of the Church of the God of Light opened. Countless believers rushed in, just to grab the best seats and fully listen to the singing of the Son of God. Today is the annual Holy Advent Day. Lord Lucifer will personally lead the believers to sing hymns. They look forward excitedly. When the bell rang, a man wearing a white robe embroidered with gold silk roses walked slowly to the high platform. This is an extremely beautiful young man with long, supple hair that is as bright as gold. At first glance, everyone will be shocked by the beauty of the dust. His eyebrows, eyes, nose, and lips, there is not a single part of his face that is not exquisite and beautiful. His beauty has a holy connotation, a pure and straightforward beauty that transcends gender and definition. His azure blue eyes looked at his followers tolerantly, and everyone who was swept by his gaze seemed to faint with excitement. Whispering prayers, there is a divine and warm light escaping. Lord Lucifer! The believers put their hands together, full of excitement, but did not dare to exclaim loudly, for fear of disturbing the Holy Sun. Afterwards, Lucifer began to lead the believers to sing hymns. The pure and ethereal singing reverberated in the church, surrounding people. Hearing this song, everyone showed a peaceful expression, as if in their closed eyes, they had already I saw the place of happiness. Except for one person, that is Mr. Pace Ya, Lucifer's personal guard. Pace Ya Christian, wearing a simple and delicate silver armor, stood under the prayer table, with a blank face, dutifully scanning all the places where anomalies might occur. The chant is coming to an end. Great, it's safe today. Wait, what is that? When the last chant was sung, Lucifer opened his azure eyes, he smiled perfectly at the believers, and then leaned down gently to salute. Just as he turned to step off the stage, a foreign object accompanied by screams came upon him. "Sir, please accept my love." The foreign object flew into a parabola and flew towards Lucifer exactly. Just as it was about to fall on Lucifer, a silver light flashed and it was split in half with a swipe. "Sir, are you all right?" It was Paisya, and he rushed over quickly with his eyes and hands, and turned a half-circle around Lord Saint Sun's waist with one hand to block him, and then drew his sword with his backhand and split the foreign object in half. He asked the person behind him seriously, and looked at the ground, where there were several broken roses. Who is it? How dare you attack Lord Saint Sun?" The believers were in chaos and began to search for the who harassed the Lord of the Holy Sun. Paisya was ashamed, while lamenting that Lucifer really deserved to be the man who loved the author's father, and walked to the back of the church while protecting him. "Thank you for your hard work, Paisya." Lucifer leaned halfway into his arms, blinking and smiling. "You are really a heroic knight." Paisya was stunned for a moment, and immediately realized that the leader was praising him, because he had left the chaotic church and was now very safe in the courtyard, so he swiped his hands back and stood up, walking towards Lucifer in the most standard manner. After a ceremony, he solemnly assured, "Please rest assured, Lord Holy Sun, I will never forget my original intention to move forward, study hard and practice hard, and become a qualified paladin." Lucifer, who still maintained a slightly weak posture, stared at him and smiled slowly. "What a good boy, I really didn't see you wrong." So Paisya also laughed, and he was quietly relieved. Sure enough, leaders like conscious subordinates. Paisya, the new paladin who only took office 2 days ago, was nominated by Lucifer to be his personal guard. This made him attract the jealousy and targeting of countless people, but Paisya was not afraid, even more and more determined to stay by Lucifer's side. The reason for the story has to start from a year ago, and even from another world. A year ago, Paisya was still an Earth nerd. When he woke up, he suddenly passed through. If Paisya knew that he would wear it into the brainless dog blood novel he read before going to bed, or the cannon fodder with the same name as himself, he would definitely throw his phone into the refrigerator to calm it down. Unfortunately, it was too late. When he realized that he had crossed, it was too late. After waking up in a daze, Paisya saw a European classical-style bedroom, and he was lying on the neat and soft big bed in the bedroom. Not far from the bed stood a full-length round mirror with carved patterns. Paisya saw a face of a young man who was very similar to himself but more delicate appeared in the mirror. Suddenly, a stinging pain occurred in the brain, and fragmented memory fragments came pouring in. When Paisya digested those memory fragments, he sadly discovered that the original owner of this body, Paisya Christian, was a cannon fodder in the brainless novel he read before going to bed. In this and brainless Western fantasy novel, cannon fodder Paisya is a poor nobleman. He has a very pure body and is possessed by evil spirits. Later, when he was in trouble with the male protagonist, he was attacked by the holy light was purified to ashes. Really cannon fodder, nothing more than this. He learned from the memory fragments that last night, Paisya Christian encountered the demon who was going to devour his soul and occupy his body, but unlike the novel, the original Paisya's soul and the demon perished together. So what occupied his body became Paisya from another world, not the soul of the cannon fodder demon. But wait! If it is said that being possessed by foreign souls equals being occupied by demons, is oneself equal to demons? Paisya couldn't help but fell into contemplation. But soon, he was sure that he was not a demon because there is no such weak demon as him. The memory fragments Paisya obtained were very rare, and their only purpose was to recognize people. So Paisya knew that there were only 3 servants, the housekeeper Jack, the footman Frank and the maid Anne, but she had no idea how the original owner Paisya got along with them. After a day of trembling and pretending, Paisya woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. He squinted and saw a ferocious phantom lying on the head of the bed. The terrifying aura made his soul tremble. At this moment, he realized that he had nothing in front of the devil. "Fight back!" The shadow of the demon said suspiciously. "Strange, how can there be other demons' aura? Is it the prey marked by other demons?" Tisk. "It seems that it is not good to grab people, but if he is alive tomorrow night, you are welcome to enjoy GGGGG. After laughing, the demon phantom left. Paisya froze and was covered in cold sweat. She lay down without moving until the sun rose. When the sun shines into the house through the window coffin, he jumped up suddenly and rushed downstairs with big dark circles under his eyes. "From now on, I will be the most devout believer of the God of Light." Because the master was too young, he only knew how to play and did not want to make progress, which led to the increasingly severe financial situation of the family. In the end, he had to lay off a large number of employees to maintain his life. The 3 surviving servants were shocked. But no matter how they tried to persuade the master to calm down, Paisya was still determined to go to the Church of God. Love is sincere and precious, and freedom is more expensive. If it is for life, both can be thrown away. He's going to church and hugs the male lead's thigh. Paisya knows that this is a world with magic and gods. Magicians have a very high status among ordinary people. Among them, light magicians are also called holy magicians. The status is the most noble, because in this world, people generally believe in light gods. And the male protagonist of this novel is the saint son Lucifer of the Church of the God of Light. The novel describes that he has a beautiful appearance, a sacred temperament, a kind heart and a strong strength. At the same time, he is also coveted by countless people, including some there are both women and men, so that Paisya returned to the work details page several times to confirm that it was classified as no CP instead of. The novel once described that the high evil great demon dared to attack the Church of God, and the male protagonist Lucifer's light magic is the most powerful, and only he can completely eliminate the great demon. Therefore, the best way that Paisya could think of to make his life go smoothly was to enter the Church of God and get closer to Lucifer. He didn't expect Lucifer to be close to him, but only hoped that the other party would see it in everyone's eyes. For the sake of a colleague, if you have any difficulties, please help. But the reckless Paisya forgot that this day was Holy Advent. According to the regulations, the Holy Son had to get on the float today, walk around the streets of the imperial capital for a long time, and then return to the church to lead the believers to sing hymns and pray for blessings. When he rushed to the street, the lively crowd almost squeezed him into mincemeat. Paisya walked along the stream of people blankly. Suddenly, there was a commotion in front of him, and the stream of people surged back and forth like waves. A luxurious float surrounded by flowers slowly came into view. The float was huge. On the front and back stood priests holding silver basins. They kept pouring out holy water with rose petals. A golden light flashed across a raised platform, and Paisya couldn't help squinting. When the golden light softened, he could see the person in the center and highest position of the float so beautiful. The illiterate Paisya was shocked by the prosperous beauty standing at the pinnacle of human beings. If he had to be asked to come up with one word to describe it, he would probably say, angel. Blonde and blue-eyed, holy and beautiful, how similar is the image of an angel in the fool's heart. Paisya had to suspect that most of the believers of the Light God sect went there for the beauty of the Holy Sun. Since Lord Saint Sun appeared on the float, people approached him like crazy, and somehow Paisya was squeezed to the side of the float, because Lucifer stood a little higher, and his feet were probably on the side of Paisya. Summer waist height. Long live the Holy Sun! At that time, everyone was shouting and praising Lucifer, but Paisya looked blank. When Lucifer looked around, Paisya raised his head subconsciously, just in line with Lucifer's line of sight. Superior. The two laughed at the same time. Lucifer smiled lovingly, and Paisya smiled awkwardly. He saw a hint of confusion flashing in Lucifer's eyes, but he didn't delve into it, and continued to face other believers with a perfect smile. May God bless all beings. He closed his eyes and prayed. At this moment, an angry voice came from beside him, "You are blocking me from seeing Lord Saint's son." Immediately after a strong force hit, Paisya's pupils shrank suddenly, and his body staggered forward. With a stab, the world fell silent. Paisya looked up slowly, and saw Lord Saint's son's clean calf. The next second, the whole world was angry. Paisya was arrested as a gangster who attacked the Son of God. People wanted to punish him, but the kind Lucifer stopped everyone. Not only did he not have a light to purify Paisya, but he brought Paisya back to the church. Then he took his hand and asked him gently and sincerely what had happened. At that time, Paisya was so moved by him that he apologized to him with tears in his eyes, explaining that he really didn't mean it. Lucifer, who was illuminated by the holy light, said, "I know, I saw it, poor lost lamb, you are the one hurt by others. Paisya, the male protagonist is worthy of being a male protagonist. Look at this bright-eyed beauty, and look at how kind-hearted he is." Later, Lucifer said that it was a pity that everyone misunderstood Paisya for not being able to explain it clearly on the spot. As compensation, Paisya's wish could be fulfilled. Paisya asked with tears in her eyes, "Is it possible to have any wish?" "Of course." Lucifer looked at him encouragingly. Paisya thought about it and said, "Then I want to be the most devout believer of God." Can. It can be, but the specific implementation method depends on the actual situation. Lucifer said that the priests of the Church of God are already overcrowded. If you want to sign up, you will have to wait in line for about 100 years. Paisya said, "I do not know light magic, please let me stay in the church as a knight and stay by your side." Lucifer smiled, "Yes, as long as you are pious in your heart, your identity is just an empty name, but if you want to be my personal guard, you have to be strong enough." So Paisya entered the paladin training camp. Here, he underwent a whole year of hard training, from a once thin white chicken to a little white face with six-pack abs. No way, born white, not tan. After that, he did not live up to his hard work in private training day and night. With excellent results, he was selected by Lucifer as his personal guard knight. The author has something to say. The pre-received article "Why is the Devil So Delicate?" asks for a pre-receive. If you are not interested, please skip it. Alright, the text is as follows: the coquettish play, the demon, the big boss, the rebirth attack X. The handsome, upright, and righteous senior brother. Through the subject, Lincia Oyan read a book before going to bed, and when he woke up, he turned into a senior brother from the Qing Shan faction who was tortured and killed by the murderous demon Venerable. Lincia Oyan packed up and prepared to leave the main battlefield. On the way, he rescued a charming and delicate beauty who was kidnapped by Mozhan's subordinates. Yango Lincia Oyan fell in love with the beauty at first sight, and the beauty was also interested in him. In order to please the beauty, Lincia Oyan righteously scolded Mozhan all the way. The beauty laughed more and more happily, and Lincia Oyan became more and more confident. Until he accidentally bumped into the scene of the beauty and the mysterious man in black having a private meeting. He heard that the man in black called him unintentional demon venerable. Lincia Oyan. Unintentional demon venerable, isn't that the big devil Yin's Haimo who pierced his heart with a sword in the original and arrogant and cruel? In an instant, Lincia Oyan softened. Although he didn't understand what the other party was doing, he didn't dare to pierce Kungzan's senior brother Lincia Oyan, who was afraid of being pierced by a sword. Then Yin's Haimo looked at him with a smile on his cheeks. "Brother Yan, why don't you continue to scold that big devil?" Lincia Oyan smiled hard, opened his eyes and said, "Nonsense, I thought about it carefully. In fact, it doesn't seem that demon venerable is that bad." Small theatre, after trying to seduce him over and over again, looking at Lin Xiaoyan whose eyes were fixed on other people, Yin Haimo chuckled and hugged him in his arms, pinching his chin and forcibly facing himself. Why only look at others? Isn't it better than those vulgar fans? Lin Xiaoyan. Hard, fist hard. Another pre-received article. Mysterious boyfriend quick pass also asks for pre-receive, which is also a beauty attack. Time returns to the present. Pei Xia escorted Lucifer to the side hall where he was resting. It was another year of Holy Advent. When the sun was at its fullest at 10 o'clock, Lucifer would leave the church on a float. Come back after more than half of the imperial capital. They had just walked a few steps when a young man dressed in the same way as Pei Xia, but taller and with short hair that caught the eye, rushed over. When the red-haired youth shouted out the words Sir Saint's son, Pei Xia couldn't help frowning in pain, because he knew that there were about 10,000 ducks croaking in the ears of himself and Lucifer at the same time. Oh my God, the God of Light is above, Lord Saint's son, are you all right? Damn it, Pei Xia, you are so irresponsible. If it were me, the wicked gangster would definitely have not thrown out the hidden weapon. Get him out soon. Pei Xia, you must reflect on yourself. Because the red-haired youth was assigned to guard at the back entrance, he was unable to protect Lucifer at the first time. He excitedly greeted him and circled around Lucifer. The red-haired young man's name is André, another of Lucifer's bodyguards, as well as a supporting role in the book. As the guardian knight of the Son of God, André was lucky enough to get more appearances. Was unfortunately portrayed by the author as a silly big man with only the sun in his mind. It was precisely because of André's too strong admiration for Lucifer that Pei Xia repeatedly suspected that the author was a deep cabinet. Pei Xia knew that no matter what she said, it was useless, because all the words that André babbled were meant for Lucifer. So Pei Xia only whispered a few words, "It's because of you that the Holy Sun asked you to guard the door behind you." The next second, the jealous gaze almost pierced Pei Xia, and Pei Xia touched her nose and stopped talking. André said sadly, "Master Holy Sun, you really shouldn't let this rookie who just took office accompany you to meet the believers. Only me can protect you perfectly." Lucifer turned around and walked towards the side hall with his smile unchanged. "Okay André, Pei Xia did a great job, can you be quiet for a while?" André bowed his head dejectedly, "Yes." Pei Xia glanced at André with some sympathy, but he still thought that André was gay. Probably because Pei Xia was gay, he couldn't help but feel a little sad when he saw André like this. In modern times, Pei Xia's parents divorced and remarried and had new children. Pei Xia became a drag on oil that neither of them wanted. Later, when she grew up, she accidentally exposed her sexuality, and was even more disgusted by her parents. Pei Xia also developed a slightly indifferent temperament. He no longer insisted on family affection, as long as he lived a normal and healthy life. As for love, this circle is a bit messy. He also doesn't force it, he just wants to live by it. It's best to meet true love one day in the future, and it's good to be single for a lifetime. Now that I came to a different world, my life could not be guaranteed for the time being, and naturally I didn't have the energy to find any true love, not to mention that with Lucifer by his side, Pei Xia felt that his aesthetic standards were being forced by him to skyrocket. If it weren't for Lucifer being too beautiful, no matter how he thought about it, he felt that he was Xiao, and Pei Xia believed that he was also Xiao. Xiao couldn't have a blind date, maybe he would be as bitterly in love with Lucifer as André. Alas! Pei Xia followed Lucifer and passed André, he couldn't help but patted him on the shoulder, "My condolences. This is a knocked novel, your love is doomed to have no results." André. He showed a confused expression, "Why should I mourn?" At 10 o'clock, Lord Lucifer got on the float on time and started to parade through the street. Pei Xia was on the left side of the float as an escort, and the crowd smashed him with overwhelming force. "Long live the Holy Sun! Sir, I will always follow you." May the God of Light bless the Son of God for immortality. Pei Xia couldn't help but wonder if this group of people believed in the God of Light or Lucifer. Suddenly, there was an exclamation in front of him, and the crowd rioted. Lucifer frowned slightly, raised his hand and pressed lightly, and the people subconsciously fell silent. Pei Xia, go see what happened. Yes. Pei Xia trotted to the front and found that a girl accidentally fell to the ground and was trampled several times by the crowd. It looked serious, but Pei Xia didn't have time to think about it, so she picked her up and ran back to the edge of the float. Lord Holy Sun, she is injured. Don't worry, it's all right. Lucifer comforted him, and then cast light magic. The soft white light poured onto Pei Xia's body, and Pei Xia only felt warm and extraordinarily comfortable. Soon, the girl in her arms woke up. She opened her eyes in a daze, and when she looked up, she met Lucifer's beautiful face. Ah! Holy Sun! Before she could finish screaming excitedly, she rolled her eyes and fainted again. Pei Xia! The idiot/girl is so scary. He carried the girl to the side of the road, put her down and shook her awake. At this time, the crowd on the street had started a new round of praise. What holiness, greatness, glory, kindness, angels! These are just words that are tired of hearing on weekdays. Lucifer glanced up inadvertently. I caught a glimpse of Pei Xia returning to the float with a solemn face and a faint dissatisfaction. Lucifer couldn't help but tilted his head and showed a smile. It was already afternoon when the parade ended. Lucifer was very busy. He had to endure hunger and pray with the believers in the church. After that, he had to share holy wine, praise the gods, and set off huge fireworks formed by light magic after nightfall. In short, after everything was over, it was already late at night. Pei Xia dutifully stayed by his side and starved with him. Now that the door of the church was closed, they could finally have a good meal. As the prestigious saint's son, Lucifer has the qualification to dine independently, and he and 2 personal guard knights dine in a room alone. Because he was ordered not to speak while eating, André could only resist the desire to praise Lucifer, and tried his best to make himself look elegant and eat quickly. As a result, as soon as he put down his fork, wiped the grease off his mouth with a napkin, and was about to praise the Holy Sun while praising the God of Light for his delicious food, he saw Lucifer turned his head to look at himself and asked. Full. Yes, Lord Holy Sun. André replied excitedly. Then, you go out. Ah! André was stunned. Lucifer didn't like to repeat it a second time. He just smiled and looked at André. André couldn't help it. His excitement instantly turned into depression, and he floated out resentfully. Suddenly, only Lucifer and Pei Xia were left on the small dining table. The candle light was slightly dim, adding a bit of romance to the dimly yellow room. Lucifer's face seemed to have its own holy light, and his long hair and eyes were still shining. In comparison, Pei Xia's short black hair looked a little bleak, and he couldn't see it himself, and his honey-colored eyes became thicker and sweeter under the dim candle light. Pei Xia, are you angry? Lucifer asked him suddenly, and he held a glass of holy wine and shook it gently. No. Pei Xia was stunned. Although he refuted Lucifer's statement, he still unconsciously stopped his fork hand. Lucifer sighed softly, but I can feel that your heart is angry. This is too amazing, is it really so obvious? Pei Xia is not very good at lying, he explained a little embarrassedly. Actually, it's not that serious, Lord Holy Sun. Why? Lucifer asked in a warm voice. It was a gentle tone, but there was a hint of persecution, which induced the knight who was not good at hiding in front of him to speak his mind. And Pei Xia, as he wished, slowly clenched his fists, and lowered his head as if he was unwilling to face him. Lord Holy Sun, I admit, because today's events are also related to Holy Sun. The corners of Lucifer's perfect lips slightly raised an inconspicuous arc. Continue. I know. Pei Xia took a deep breath and said, Sir Saint Sun is so popular. The hand shaking the goblet subconsciously accelerated a little bit, and a small vortex formed in the red wine. Lucifer said happily, "What else?" Pei Xia put down his fork with a snap, very serious. "So I think that the Holy Son knows that he is so popular and has the ability to quiet the believers, but he always allows them to crowd and chase. This is wrong." Lucifer. The hand shaking the cup stopped. Saying bad things about the leader in front of the leader is probably asking for hardship, but Pei Xia knows that Lucifer is a kind person, and he will cry because innocent people are injured. So instead of having more serious problems in the future in the event of a stampede accident, it is better to warn him in advance and let him avoid creating a tragedy himself, so that no one will be injured, and he will not have to blame himself. So Pei Xia mustered up the courage and said the words. Since he had already said it, it would be too much of a disadvantage if he did not say it completely. He confided all his thoughts in one go. The bigger the event, the more important it is to avoid accidents. I think the Lord should restrain them, whether it's telling believers that they should pray quietly, or persuading them to stand still and wait and not always think about chasing you from beginning to end. In short, you be a leader, you can definitely do it. After thinking about it, Pei Xia added, Sir Saint Sun is pure and kind, everyone will understand. Lucifer. Pat. With a crisp sound, the high solace of the expensive and delicate colored glass fell to the ground and shattered into countless pieces. The dark wine was spilled on the ground, and the sweet aroma of wine filled the whole room. Lord Holy Sun! Pei Xia was startled, and quickly stood up and walked around to help him deal with the mess, but Lucifer bent down and picked up the pieces first. What? When Pei Xia came to him in a hurry, Lucifer let out a short exclamation, then he straightened up with a slight frown and raised his hand. A little bright red blood beads are emerging on his slender white fingertips. Pei Xia. Lucifer looked up at his black-haired and honey-colored knight, with long golden hair hanging down behind him and a pale face like snow. He said weakly, I will listen to your advice, thank you very much. No, it's not important, we can talk about it later. Pei Xia didn't care about anything else. He quickly took out a clean handkerchief and bent down to wipe his fingertips. However, Lord Seiko's fingers retracted a second before the white handkerchief touched him. He put his fingers in front of his rose-like lips and stretched out the tip of his bright red tongue to lick it gently and slowly. He looked at Pei Xia with pure eyes, and he didn't seem to feel that there was anything wrong with his actions. The author has something to say, there is water on our roses, that is, we need to drip it, that is, we need to force it. For a moment, Pei Xia felt a strange throbbing in his heart, because the person opposite was too tempting, but fortunately his will was firm enough to not let his eyes waver. Pei Xia was still bent over, holding a white handkerchief with a serious expression. Sir, are your hands okay? Lucifer lowered his eyes slightly, with a fragile look on his beautiful face. It's okay, I don't mind. Really? Pei Xia couldn't help but ask, but why doesn't the Holy Sun use light magic to heal? Lucifer smiled with difficulty, already healed. That's good. The black-haired handsome knight breathed a sigh of relief. Although it was only a small wound, it was particularly dazzling when it appeared on the perfect Lucifer. Judging from Lucifer's delicate and furry habit of always being clean and tidy and taking a bath of rose petals on weekdays, it was obvious that he would not make himself appear embarrassed at will. It was a great accident that he could beat the wine glass today. Pei Xia felt a little embarrassed. Probably no one had ever said something like "you're wrong" to Lucifer before, so that he was too fragile to accept it for a while. However, Pei Xia still believed that Lucifer was so kind and considerate that he would never hold any grudge against him. He found a broom and dustpan to clean the ground. The glass fragments and wine stains disappeared, but the aroma of wine still filled the air, especially Lucifer. The rich aroma of wine almost soaked his robes. Lucifer sighed and stood up, his white robe hanging on the ground. He said, Pei Xia, I have something to tell you. Please tell me. Asked the competent knight standing beside him. The Pope and the elders unanimously decided that starting from the day after tomorrow, let me start a missionary tour around the mainland with the imperial capital as the starting point, and at the same time check the work of the branch church of the Guangming sect. Pei Xia suddenly tightened his body. He did not show any strangeness, and tried his best to make himself appear calmer. Yes, Lord Holy Sun. This time, I want you to accompany me. Just mentioning yourself, does that mean that Andrei won't be allowed to follow? Pei Xia was a little surprised, because he still remembered that the beginning of this novel started with Lucifer's missionary tour of the continent, and the guard knight guarding him was Andrei. In the original plot, Pei Xia has not yet appeared at this time, and when it appears in the future, it will not be her current identity. It can only be said that he, a butterfly from another world, accidentally fanned out a tornado. Of course, Pei Xia would never refuse Lucifer's request, not to mention that he took the initiative to mention it. Even if he didn't mention it, Pei Xia wanted to stay by his side all the time. Yes, Lord Holy Sun, I will definitely protect you, do my job as a paladin, and never let Xiao Xiao hurt you. Pei Xia saluted him and swore, and then, still a little puzzled, aren't you going to bring Andrei with you this time? If there are 2 personal guard knights accompanying him for protection, the security will definitely be higher. Lucifer put his slender index finger in front of his lips, shh. He suddenly smiled playfully. Compared with those smiles that never wavered like a mask, he was more lively and radiant now. Don't tell Andrei, otherwise, he will wake up all the sleepers in the cemetery. Pei Xia laughed, yes, Lord Holy Sun. It turned out that Lucifer was also troubled by Andrei's noise. The two of them discussed things here, and Lucifer and Pei Xia walked out of the dining room. Andrei was guarding the door. His eyes were bright, and he didn't let go of the birds flying in the night sky. God knows if it was that was created by magic. After all, this kind of thing is not without precedent. As soon as he saw Lucifer coming out, he immediately raised a cheerful smile and said loudly to Lucifer, "Dear Holy Sun, where are you going next? Your loyal knight Andrei? Nima will always follow you." Lucifer looked back with a smile and said to Andrei, "Andrei, I have an important task for you. Please tell me, your subordinates must do their best to complete it. Can I entrust you to help me take care of Ruidi?" Ruidi is Lucifer's horse, with platinum blonde hair, tall and strong, very good looking. He is simply a prince of a horse. It is said that Reddy has half unicorn blood, has a high IQ and can understand human speech. As ordered, this subordinate will go now. Andrei did not suspect him, and after taking the task, he went to take care of the horse with his head held high. Pei Xia escorted Lucifer back to the small independent hall where he lived. The facilities here are all available, all of which are exclusively for the Lord of the Holy Sun. As Lucifer's personal guard knights, Pei Xia and Andrei were allowed to live in the side hall here in order to protect Lucifer at close range. Although Pei Xia felt that Lucifer didn't need much protection. At this time, when he returned home, Lucifer took off his alcohol-stained robe and planned to take a bath to cleanse his body. Usually, for such a more private matter, Lucifer would not let people watch. The nun and Pei Xia were responsible for preparing hot water and the petals for the bath for him. After that, Lucifer would take a bath alone, while Pei Xia guarded the door to prevent anyone from accidentally breaking in until Lucifer took the initiative to open the door and come out. But today, before the last step was completed, Lucifer's slightly weak voice suddenly came from the bathroom, "Pei Xia, can you come in and help me?" Pei Xia was stunned. "Of course, Lord Holy Sun, are you sure I can come in?" Did something happen in there? Did he fall?" Pei Xia didn't think much, pushed open the door and quickly flashed in. A white mist of water rose in the bathroom, making everything here seem a little hazy. Pei Xia looked towards the bath, and among the petals, the blonde young man was sitting in the warm water with his back to him. Pei Xia took off her dirty shoes and walked over, asking suspiciously, "Lord Holy Sun, what's the matter with you?" I. Lucifer turned his head faintly, raised an arm stained with crystal water droplets, and put his hand on his head, as if very distressed. I'm drunk. Pace ya. Lucifer looked at him delicately, as if he was looking at some great hero who can save the world. He said, Sya, I'm dizzy and can't stand up, please come and help me. Of course. Pace ya was speechless. No matter what, he couldn't understand why he didn't get drunk during dinner, but got drunk after taking a shower. Besides, didn't he drop the glass of wine already? Could it be that someone poisoned him? Pace ya pondered quickly, her hands and feet kept on. She knelt down to the side of the bath with a large bath towel, wrapped the bath towel around Lucifer and helped him stand up. The pattering water dripped from his body, and inevitably a few rose petals touched him, as if these thoughtless dead creatures were also fascinated by this body that was favored by God. To be honest, Lucifer is taller than Pace ya. He is slender and has thin muscles on his fair arms. He is not what Pace ya imagined to be weak. But he was probably really drunk, and his hands and feet were weak. As soon as he walked ashore, he leaned on Pace ya for help. Pace ya hurriedly reached out to hug him, and the solace of his feet slipped under the unexpected weight. There is water everywhere. He widened his eyes suddenly, and couldn't help showing a terrified look. The next moment, he half-hugged and hugged Lord Saint Sun and fell into the water with a thud. Pace ya stood up from the water, raised her hand and wiped her face, squirting out the water she accidentally choked into her mouth. This time, not only did Lucifer fail to climb ashore, but even Pace ya got wet. Sir Saint Sun, are you all right? Pace ya immediately went to see Lucifer. He saw Lucifer get up from the water and cough a few times while leaning on the edge of the bathtub. The white bath towel had floated away, revealing the young man's beautiful and powerful body, with rose petals sticking to his body and hair. White, fair, and red and beautiful, under the slightly dim light, it looks like a bewitching goblin. Pace ya was stunned for a moment, and saw Lucifer fiddling with the wet long hair stuck to his face. His long golden supple hair was particularly messy at this time, and his blue eyes were misty, inexplicably fragile and beautiful. It makes people feel a sadistic desire for no reason in their hearts. Cough, I'm fine. His voice was slightly hoarse, and his long eyes touched Pace ya. Pace ya felt agitated, and quickly picked up the bath towel and raised it to cover it, covering everything below Lucifer's shoulders. Lord Holy Sun, I probably know why you are drunk. Pace ya said solemnly. Lucifer, who was looking at Pace ya with blurry eyes, hey. Because it's so stuffy here. Too much carbon dioxide creates a lack of oxygen, and the brain feels like drunkenness. That's right, it was precisely because of this that Lucifer, who didn't drink for dinner, felt that he was drunk, and Pace ya also felt that his body temperature rose and he couldn't breathe after entering here. Undecided, probably Lucifer's beauty also played a role in it. But Pace ya never admits that he is such a person who takes a fancy to himself. He thinks that he is very restrained and pursues quality in his relationship. He is definitely not the kind of person who loves whoever looks good. So Pace ya didn't wait for Lucifer to say anything. He suddenly jumped out of the water, went around behind Lucifer, grabbed his arm and dragged him up, and then dragged him to the in front of the window. Pace ya looked solemn, stretched out his hand and pushed it, the window opened, and the night wind rushed in. He held God's darling Lord Lucifer, who was wrapped in a bath towel, and let him lean against the window so that he could receive the fresh air to the maximum extent. Sir, are you feeling better? Lucifer, whose face was smeared by the wind. He raised his hand and sighed and pressed his temple. A few strands of blonde hair floated behind him after being blown dry. He said, Pace ya. Yes, Lord Holy Sun. You really are a knowledgeable paladin. The Lord of the Holy Sun as it should be. In the end, Lord Saint Sun regained consciousness. Pace ya closed the window and was about to take another towel to wipe his hair to avoid headache, when Lord Saint Sun waved him out. I'll just do it myself. Lucifer pushed Paisya out, his fingertips slid lightly over the back of Paisya's neck. He said gently, "You're all wet too, hurry up and fight. Take care of it. Thank you for your consideration." Paisya didn't insist any longer and left obediently. In the dimly lit bathroom, Lucifer, God's darling, held a wet rose petal in his fingertips, which was taken from Paisya's neck. It seems that the Lord's Son, who is loved by all things in the world, is being chased by the light no matter where he sits. There is a smile on his holy face, but the pure blue eyes have quietly become deep, as if there is an indescribable dormant in the darkness. What? His shadow was reflected on the carved wall, and when the candle light flickered, the shadow suddenly became terrifying. He was looking at the rose with water droplets on his fingertips, and suddenly his finger moved, he crushed the rose petals, and the bright red juice flowed down the fingers. On the third day, the sun was shining, and the Son of God set off with Paisya, 6 other knights, and 2 carriages. Everyone cheered and said goodbye to the Son of God, hoping that he would travel smoothly and spread the brilliance of the God of Light to more places. Everyone was smiling, except for one André. He looked at Lucifer sitting on ready with tears in his eyes, and said, "Sir, do you really need me to accompany you? The God of Light is above, without me by your side, how can the safety be guaranteed?" Paisya, who was sitting next to the Holy Son, stuck his head out silently, "Depend on me, and them," pointing to the other 6 knights. Lucifer kept smiling and waved goodbye to everyone who saw him off. "May God bless all sentient beings. May God bless all beings." Lucifer rode in front of him on his handsome tall horse, Paisya rode a black horse in front of him, and the other 6 knights, 2 in carriages, and 4 on horseback. The small team started to move forward. Originally, the church was going to have more personnel to Lucifer, but Lucifer refused on the grounds that he should not be extravagant. Moreover, his own strength is not low, so he only formed this small team. Because there were no servants and no other priests, Paisya took over all the corresponding matters in taking care of Lucifer. They moved forward slowly, until they left the gate of the imperial capital, and the crowd of enthusiastic send-offs dwindled. Finally, not so crowded, Paisya couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. He opened the map he carried with him and looked at it. He had already negotiated before departure. The first destination was Fade City, which is a medium-sized city relatively close to the imperial capital. Going all the way east, you can enter another country Danathan. After that, they will travel around the continent in the direction of east-northwest-south, spreading the radiance of the God of Light to more places, and then return to the imperial capital. Cough cough. A weak cough suddenly came from beside him, and Paisya immediately turned around to see Lucifer covering his mouth with his hand. He immediately pulled the reins to slow down, came to Lucifer, and persuaded, "Master Holy Son, there are no believers around now, you can rest in the carriage." "It's okay." Lucifer's voice was slightly hoarse, "It's just a small illness." Paisya frowned in disapproval. Lucifer's cold had to start from the night Paisya fell into his bath. I don't know if it was because of the wind blowing with wet hair that he became hoarse the next day. Fortunately, it wasn't serious and didn't show it, so it didn't make believers worry. Light magic has a very good effect on healing damage and trauma caused by demons, and is less effective in curing diseases but equally effective. Paisya didn't know why Lucifer hadn't cured himself. After thinking about it, he came to the conclusion, Lord Saint Sun must be too ill, and the light magic could barely keep him recovering. Thinking that Lucifer's cold had nothing to do with him, Paisya felt a little self-blame, and he insisted, "Please go to the carriage to rest. If the condition becomes more serious, the believers will be worried." Lucifer frowned slightly, his perfectly shaped eyebrows, with traces of sadness hidden in his eyes. He turned his face to Paisya, so that his clear blue eyes could reflect the other person's figure. "What about you, Paisya, are you worried about me too?" "Of course." Pei Xia was surprised why he asked this way. I am your knight in person, so I will naturally worry about you. Alas! The sick people were probably a little hypocritical, and Lucifer chased after him and asked, if you weren't my knight in the bodyguard, would you still worry about me? Rule number 1, never be 100% honest with your boss. Pei Xia's eyes moved quickly, and he said with a bit of a guilty conscience that was not very well concealed, of course, Lord Holy Sun, I am the most devout believer of the God of Light. Lucifer looked at him quietly, as if he had seen through his lies. Pei Xia was startled and was afraid that he would fire him. He hurriedly began to think about how to make himself appear more sincere. After a moment of silence, Pei Xia spoke up, Ah, Light, you are the beginning of everything. At the beginning of all things, the of Light came to the earth, and he taught the foolish people. To enter the Light religion, you must memorize the classics Bright Bible. Ever since he made up his mind to be the most devout believer of the God of Light, no matter how devout his heart is, he must never let his face-saving project fall behind. Pei Xia thinks he is not a smart person, so he can only start with a stupid way. He has already memorized the Bright Bible. The corners of Lucifer's mouth moved slightly, watching him for a while, not knowing what to say, he sighed softly, raised his hand to signal Pei Xia to stop. Okay Pei Xia, I feel your piety. Since this is the case, Lord Shenzi should hurry back to the carriage and rest. This time Lucifer didn't refuse any more, but obediently got off the horse and entered the carriage. There were 2 carriages, one for Lucifer's use, and the other for pulling a few people's luggage and other things. Lucifer's carriage was arranged so comfortably and delicately that it was fragrant, with fruit black tea and snacks. The interior was spacious enough for 2 people to lie down and rest without being crowded. Pei Xia helped Lucifer into the carriage, and just as he was about to lower the thick velvet curtain and return to his horse, Lucifer pulled his sleeves. Pei Xia, come in with me. He looked at him tenderly and said, his pale pink lips slightly raised in a gentle arc. Pei Xia said in surprise, what's the matter, Lord Saint's son? Cough cough. He coughed twice, pressed his forehead, and said, I feel a little tired after being sick, and I want to hear you read the Bright Bible. Can you, Pei Xia? It turned out to be like this, really worthy of being a holy son, the difference between true piety and false piety is really big. Pei Xia looked at him admiringly, of course. Lucifer smiled slightly, then let's come in together. Pei Xia was very moved, and then refused, no, Lord Holy Sun. Lucifer frowned. If you get too close, you will infect me with a cold. Pei Xia said sincerely, I want to protect you and not get sick. Lucifer opened his mouth, not knowing what to say for a while. After a pause, he seemed to ask weakly, but you promised me just now. Don't worry, I can read it to you by the car window. After Pei Xia finished speaking, he put down the curtain, mounted his horse in a dashing manner, and came to the carriage's window. He cleared his throat, full of confidence, please rest assured, I don't need to read the Bible to read it to you, please listen all Light, you are the beginning of everything. At the beginning of the growth of all things, the of Light came to the earth, he taught the foolish people. Lucifer. The other knights escorted quietly whispered, as expected of the person who was personally promoted by the Holy Sun to be a knight of the guard, the faith is so pious. As expected of the Holy Sun, your vision is really good. They looked at each other a few times, and smiled reassuringly at each other. The weather has been a little abnormal recently. Pei Xia was wearing the armor, and the rain still wet the clothes inside through the cracks in the armor. Lucifer sat in the carriage, so he didn't have to worry about getting drenched. At this time, Lucifer's cold was cured, and he hoped that other people would not catch a cold after the rain stopped. Pei Xia thought for a while, and silently prayed that the gods would bless him with a divine brilliance. This is also a kind of magic, but in fact Pei Xia and other paladins themselves do not use magic, but after they become paladins, they can receive the blessing of the Pope or the Holy Sun, and they can gain radiance by praying to the gods. It is equivalent to adding an all-round gain buff. And the real magician is very rare, not just anyone can be. For knights like Pace Ya, the special power they use is called sword chi. Compared with magic, its power is lower, and it relies more on its own swordsmanship and strength, but the threshold is also low, and there are more people who can use sword energy than magic. As far as Pace Ya is concerned, he is a paladin who can bless the divine brilliance and use the fire sword energy. Pace Ya. Lucifer suddenly opened the car window, and the cold rain blew into the carriage along the wind, which inevitably wet his face and long hair. Do you want to continue on your way? Yes, Lord Holy Sun. Pace Ya wiped her face and explained, there are fields and trees nearby, and there is no place to shelter from the rain. If you hide under the trees, it will be bad if you attract lightning. Not far away is Earl Hobson's fortress, which can be reached in about half an hour. We can borrow it at the Earl's house at that time. The current rain is not so heavy that it is impossible to continue on the road, but Pace Ya vaguely remembers that this seems to have reached a plot point in the original novel. He has forgotten the specific plot, and only remembers the key character Earl Hobson and the rainstorm that will continue for several days. Therefore, it is best to hurry to Earl Hobson's fort before the rain starts, otherwise the rain will be heavier. Okay. Lucifer nodded. He looked at Pace Ya and suddenly invited, it's raining so hard, Pace Ya, get on the carriage to avoid the rain. It's okay, Lord Holy Sun. Pace Ya wiped her face, I'll be there soon. Lucifer suddenly restrained his smile. When he looked at Pace Ya, he felt a little more condescending than his usual gentleness. He said, Pace Ya, this is an order. Pace Ya looked at Lucifer. He was still sitting in the carriage with a faint smile. His blue eyes were like the sea and glaciers. Suddenly, I intuitively told Pace Ya that it is best not to refuse. The rain made Pace Ya go crazy. He got off his horse in silence and climbed into the carriage. Feng Wan brought the raindrops and hit him on the face with a slight sting. Pace Ya lifted the curtain of the carriage and whispered, Lord Holy Sun, I'm in. As soon as he walked in, Pace Ya was half kneeling at the door, wondering if he should go in. The interior of the carriage was covered with expensive wool carpets, which were warm, dry, and tidy. Pace Ya, who was in a state of embarrassment, was out of tune with this exquisite carriage. Pace Ya held the helmet, and when he lowered his head, the rain dripped down his cheeks. He looked down and saw that the blanket under his knees had been wet by himself. Come over. Yes, Lord Holy Sun. In order to prevent the blankets from being soiled by the mud under the boots, Pace Ya removed the armor at the door. He bent over and approached, and before he raised his head, a white towel was draped over his hair. Sit down. Lucifer ordered lightly. Pace Ya could only sit beside him obediently, and then he saw that the carefully cared hand of the daughter was holding the white towel. Start wiping your hair. The short black hair was soon half dried. Lucifer lowered his eyes, his pale golden eyelashes trembled slightly. He looked at Pace Ya tenderly and meticulously. Are you better? Pace Ya shuddered and woke up from his astonishment. He was slightly embarrassed and shyly put his legs together and put his hands on his knees, as nervous as a primary school student. Yes, Lord Holy Sun, but you don't need to do this. It's okay. Lucifer said with a slight smile. His fingers had crossed the edge of the towel at some point, and lightly touched the flesh on Pace Ya's neck. He was probably careless. Pace Ya didn't think about it, and beat the drum frantically, but it's nothing. Lucifer interrupted him and wiped the water droplets off Pace Ya's neck with a towel. Then came the wet cloth. He smiled at him, and said jokingly, it's hard to wear wet clothes. You can change here. I promise not to peek. Pace Ya was finally able to speak, and he hurriedly said, Thank you, Lord Holy Sun, but it doesn't matter, I can use sword energy to dry my clothes. Lucifer's smile stiffened slightly, really? Yes. Paisya reached out and snatched the wet towel from Lucifer's hand, then put it on his knee and started to release the fire sword energy. Although the sword chi is not as powerful as magic, but when the fire-type sword chi is activated, the body temperature will rise, which is very convenient for drying clothes. Change your clothes in front of the holy sun? No no no, this is so rude. Paisya grinned at Lucifer, thank you, Lord Holy Sun, for letting me in to hide from the rain. Lucifer looked at the towel on his lap and was silent for a moment. You're welcome. The clothes were dried quickly. Paisya and Lucifer were very close. He was a little restrained and didn't dare to look at him. It's not because of anything else, but because Lord Saint Sun is too beautiful. Paisya is afraid that he will be shaken after watching it for a long time. As a cheater who had read the original book, Paisya knew that Lucifer didn't like other people looking at him with strange and excessive eyes. Suddenly, a relaxing and refreshing warmth enveloped his body, and now Paisya could no longer pretend that he didn't care. He looked at Lucifer, who was casting light magic on him, with a little surprise. Holy Sun, sir, thank you. You are, Lucifer, a divinely gifted magician of light, the darling of the of light, can easily use light magic even without a staff or spell. He nodded with a smile, and the ends of his long soft golden hair swayed playfully around his waist. In this way, it's not easy to get sick. Paisya suddenly realized, and was very grateful, then pushed the car window. Buck, Mallory, come here in order. The cold wind blew in with icy raindrops. Lucifer. He quickly grabbed Paisya. What did you ask them to do? Paisya looked at Lucifer clearly and said enthusiastically, Sir, I know that you are a kind-hearted person, the glory of the God of Light will always be with you, and I understand how you care for your subordinates. Call me here first because I'm afraid other people will be embarrassed, right? It's all right, Buck and the others are still soaking in the rain outside, so I'll ask them to take turns to accept the light. Lucifer sighed, no. Paisya's colleagues were on fire. Buck, hurry up. No need. Lucifer raised his hand to brush away the broken hair hanging on his forehead. He laughed. You're right, you have to be considerate of their nervousness. Just tell them to stay where they are. Paisya was a little surprised. Lucifer didn't say much. He put his hands together, bowed his head slightly, and muttered something in his mouth, and then a soft golden light spread out around him with him as the center. It enveloped Paisya, enveloped the carriage, and enveloped all the knights around. The warmth came to disperse the chill, and even in the rain, they would not stop moving forward. Confused no longer, faith is eternal. Paisya looked at Lucifer in amazement. At the center of the light, he was holy as if he was the incarnation of a god. No wonder there are strange rumors that Lucifer is the son of the god of light. Paisya looked out the window and said, You don't have to come here. The light gradually went out, and everyone was full of energy at this moment. Paisya sat in the carriage for a while, wondering if she should go out. Her colleagues were still soaking in the rain outside, and they wanted to help watch her horse. It's a shame to sit in the car and enjoy the warmth by yourself. A cup of steaming black tea was handed to Paisya. Try it. Paisya hurriedly took it. Thank you, Lord Holy Sun. He was a little annoyed. As a subordinate, how could he ask his boss to serve him? No, he had to find a chance to make up for it. Paisya quickly scanned everything in the carriage. It was too late to pour tea and water, so. Lord Holy Sun, let me peel an apple for you. Lucifer looked at him flattered, okay. So Paisya solemnly picked up the apple and the fruit knife on the table, and began to show off his superb apple skills. That's right, as the saying goes, see the big from the small. Seeing how well he uses the fruit knife, Lucifer will definitely be more believe in your swordsmanship. Suddenly, the carriage jolted violently, and a few neighs sounded, and then for some reason the wheels slipped, and the whole car turned sideways and flew out. Paisya's body slid to the left uncontrollably. With a flick of his hand, the knife fell from the palm of his hand in an instant. In the blink of an eye, he saw a sharp arrow flying over. He was horrified, and subconsciously raised his hand and threw the apple out. With a swipe of the ground, the sharp arrow pierced the apple and fell to the ground under the influence of the apple's gravity. Next to him, holding the handle of the fruit knife, Lucifer, who watched the tip of the knife almost pierce his heart, couldn't help but fell into contemplation. Bang bang! The sound of the wheels colliding repeatedly sounded, and the knight driving the carriage was very good, and in the end he just controlled the car to come over, and did not completely overturn it. Pei Xia sighed in relief while holding the handrail in the carriage, and hurriedly turned back to look at Lucifer. "Sir, how are you? Aren't you hurt?" He still remembered that when the car was tilted just now, he slid over and squeezed the other side. As a result, it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter. When he was startled, Lucifer coughed twice and slowly raised his right hand. There was a bloodstain on it, neither deep nor shallow. "It doesn't matter, it's just a small injury." Pei Xia nodded, then remembered to treat it with light magic. After he finished speaking, he stood up, grabbed his saber, and rushed out. Lucifer! He was silent and broke the fruit knife. Who? The wind and rain had not stopped outside, and several knights had already drawn their swords and confronted the few people in front. Appearing in front of them was a shivering girl in thin clothes, and 3 men riding horses and holding bows and arrows. They were wearing cloaks and couldn't see who they were for a while. They had been shooting arrows indiscriminately before, so disturbing the horses that they nearly overturned the carriage. "This is not something you should know." The leading man's voice was hoarse and low, and he said in a bad tone, "Our prey is only this one, mind your own business." Pei Xia frowned and suddenly remembered something. If he remembered correctly, the man was probably Earl Hobson, and the girl was the unlucky little supporting role. He has already entered the original plot, but unfortunately, he has forgotten the specific plot. The only thing he remembers is Lucifer's holy light. So Pei Xia took a deep breath, turned his head and said loudly, "Lord Holy Sun, someone is bullying the girl in front of you. Lord Sun, please judge. Come on, dear male protagonist, your second male peach blossom and your first female peach blossom appeared at the same time, please don't be polite and go directly. The author has something to say, thank you by Zemian for the nutrient solution." As soon as the words Lord Saint Sun came out, the weak girl and the man on horseback were both startled. Earl Hobson, headed, wiped the rain on his face and looked at it carefully. He was stunned to find that the armor and carriage of these knights really had the emblem of the light god cult. It seemed that the knight at the head was not wearing armor, bare feet, with bright honey-colored eyes under his short black hair. He sat astride the black horse, and the hand holding the sword was always in a position where he could draw the sword immediately. The torrential rain slammed on him, but his expression remained firm and unshakable. Behind him, the door curtain of the carriage was lifted, and a moving magnetic voice asked, "What happened?" Pei Xia immediately reported to him what she had seen. "Lord Lucifer." Earl Hobson took off the hat on his head, he still sat on the horse, and bowed gracefully to the carriage. "The next is the master of the Hobson family. I think it is your knight has misunderstood. This woman is a servant of my manor, she stole precious jewelry and fled, and she just came out to arrest the thief in person." "No." The girl, who was about 17 or 18 years old, sat on the muddy ground, her clothes were dyed black. She said angrily, "I'm not a thief, I'm just an ordinary servant." The girl cried and told her fears. She said that in Lord Hobson's manor, maids were often missing. Last night, she accidentally saw a body being carried away, so she escaped in panic. "You are lying." Hobson's servant didn't wait for the girl to finish, and suddenly raised the bow and arrow at her. Pei Xia's eyes dimmed, his long legs hooked on the saddle and leaned out with a sword to split the arrow. "Please don't be rude in front of Lord Saint Sun," Pei Xia said seriously. Hobson grabbed the reins and squinted slightly. Humph. At first glance, he looked very dissatisfied. Pei Xia silently sympathized with him in her heart. She is so cold now, so don't change when she meets Lucifer. The man in the carriage chuckled and said, since the two of you have their own opinions, we will judge after the investigation. Just right, Lord Earl Hobson, I will wait for the thought of borrowing your sight for a few days. Permit. Naturally. Hobson also laughed, the holy son of the light god cult is here, how can I not welcome it, but this woman, I have to take it back. Lord Count. Lucifer said warmly, I think it is more appropriate to leave her in our custody, what do you think? Master Holy Son wants to interfere in my housework. Hobson expressed his displeasure bluntly. He said in a grim voice, this is not something that the God of Light should be in charge of. Pei Xia watched the two arguing silently. Earl Hobson is not a believer of the Light God cult, and he has not seen Lucifer yet. What should I say? He quietly looked at the carriage behind him and wanted to say something to Lucifer, show your face and everything will be settled. Earl Hobson was very unhappy, but Lucifer didn't look angry at all. He still said calmly, she is asking us for help, and she is asking the God of Light for help. God will not forget his believers. Lord Count, if you insist on doing this, we can only obey God's will to save the believers. It's a threat, a threat. Hobson gritted his teeth and glared at the carriage in front of him. His angry gaze could not wait to rush in through the door curtain and chop Lucifer to pieces. It's just that he also knows that the other party is a well-known bright magician, and he has 7 knights, more people than he is now. If he really fights, he will definitely lose face. After struggling for a while, Earl Hobson gave in. He promised to hand over the girl to Lucifer's care for the time being, but if they could not verify the girl when they left, they had to admit their mistake and hand the girl over to Hobson. Busson disposes. It's natural, thank the Count for your consideration. Lucifer hid in the carriage and said leisurely. Pei Xia jumped off the horse, pulled up the wet girl, and pushed her towards Lucifer's carriage. The girl shivered, got into the carriage, and met Lucifer, who was leisurely tasting the black tea. With a swipe, the girl's face flushed, she held her skirt restrained and lowered her head, stammering, my name is Alice, thank you, Lord Saint's son, for your kindness. Lucifer looked at her quietly, and by the way to Pei Xia who was standing behind Alice, he maintained his perfect smile when facing the believers and said, please don't be afraid, God will bless you. Afterwards, a soft white light wrapped the girl and dispelled the cold air from her body. Pei Xia quietly bowed to Lucifer and turned to leave, but Lucifer stopped him, and even had some doubts. Pei Xia, where are you going? Go outside. Pei Xia was stunned and answered honestly. The group of them had already started to follow Earl Hobson to his territory, and the first female peach blossom appeared, and Pei Xia wisely planned to give the space to the two of them instead of light bulbs. Lucifer nodded with a smile, and said, as a gentleman, you must learn to be considerate of ladies. Pei Xia, take Alice to the carriage at the back to rest, and then come back to report. Yeah, Pei Xia responded with a single sigh, and only after responding did she remember what was wrong. He clearly remembered that after Lucifer rescued the girl in the original book, he kept her by his side and accompanied her. In the carriage, they would have an ambiguous plot of lending you my clothes. Why now, Lucifer actually wants Alice to go to the carriage behind. However, Pei Xia couldn't refuse Lucifer's request, so he had to take the reluctant Alice over. He thoughtfully helped her find a dry towel and a thick coat. I wore this. Sorry, there are no new clothes here. If you don't dislike it, you can use it to keep out the cold. His clothes as a rough knight can't be compared with that of the Holy Sun, but he will wear it, presumably the girl won't mind too much. Alice lowered her head embarrassedly, thank you. If there is nothing else, you can rest here first. Pei Xia so comforted. The carriage was full of debris, and there was only a small space for Alice. Pei Xia could not squeeze with her, and she had to reply to Lucifer, so after placing Alice, Paisya rushed back to Lucifer's carriage. Paisya. Lucifer looked at him with his hands clasped together. Your clothes are wet again. Sorry. Paisya apologized subconsciously. It's easy to get sick from repeated rain. If you get sick, who will protect me? Lucifer sighed. Paisya lowered her head to express her guilt, but she wondered if Lucifer really needed someone's protection. He heard the other party sigh softly, and then wrapped himself in warmth directly. Paisya saw in a daze that the wet clothes were drying at a very fast speed. He frowned tightly. Lucifer smiled, pay attention to your body. Paisya couldn't bear it any longer, Master Holy Sun, since you can directly dry it. Master Holy Sun. Before he could finish his question, he was surprised to see Lucifer fall down limply with a pale face. Paisya didn't have time to think, and immediately rushed to his side to support his shoulder. Lucifer coughed lightly, and leaned into his arms. Sya, don't worry, I'm fine. Lord Holy Sun, what's wrong with you? Paisya touched his forehead worriedly, praying that nothing would happen. It's time to go to the little boss's territory. How can the protagonist be ill? It's nothing. Lucifer said weakly, it's just that it consumes too much and is a little tired. Is that right? Paisya recalled everything that happened after he became Lucifer, and suddenly discovered an amazing thing, although he didn't know the reason, but Lucifer was very different from him in the original book. Just like the original owner, Paisya's soul perished with the devil, so that Paisya from another world occupied his body, other plots and settings would inevitably change. From this point of view, he couldn't always use the original to put it on the current Lucifer. Paisya pursed her lips, pressed Lucifer's shoulder tightly, and made a sincere oath, please rest assured, Lord Holy Sun, I will definitely protect you. Lucifer smiled with relief, because he found that his efforts finally paid off. I'm looking forward to it. So he snuggled into Paisya's arms and rested with his eyes closed. Soon, Earl Hobson's manor arrived. The people outside drove the carriage to stop in front of the castle. Paisya pushed Lucifer's shoulder. Sir, it's time to get off. Hearing this, Lucifer opened his blue eyes, and there was still a hazy mist in his eyes, as if he had just woken up. He put his hands together in front of him very weakly. I'm sorry, Paisya, I don't have the strength right now. He looked at Paisya, as if implying something. Paisya thought for a while, squatted down, and put him behind her back. Please hug my saint son tightly. Lucifer, whose original intention was to let the other party hug him, had to hug Paisya's neck first. Paisya dragged Lucifer's legs, then hunched over and walked out of the carriage. When he walked out of the compartment door, suddenly boom! Paisya was stunned. Startled, he quickly jumped off the carriage station and straightened his body. With another thud, Lucifer fell to the ground and raised his hand to cover his forehead. It's okay. Lucifer forced a smile. Paisya, I'm fine. Paisya breathed a sigh of relief. That's great. After speaking, he turned around and made way out of the castle's gate. Lucifer. He suddenly realized something, blinked lightly, put his hand down, revealing a small piece of pale pink forehead. Paisya, I suddenly feel that I have a headache. Lucifer stared at Paisya and said so bluntly. Lucifer had a headache because he hit his head. Why did he hit his head? Because I was not careful. The above content quickly flashed through Paisya's mind, and he looked at Lucifer guiltily. Sir, I'm so sorry. Please hurry up and rest in the room, I'll treat you. This is the first time Paisya has truly felt the weakness of Lucifer, a big man taller than himself. Since he consumes too much magic and cannot heal himself with magic, Paisya can only find a way by himself. He carefully stretched out his hand to support Lucifer. Lucifer didn't refuse, took his hand, and walked in slowly as if the injury was not on his forehead but on his leg. Paisya suspected that he might have had a concussion, and wondered if light magic could cure his brain. But he didn't express his suspicions, because there is no word concussion here, saying that you may have a brain injury, that is tantamount to swearing. At this time, Earl Hobson ordered the butler to arrange for this group of people from the Light God cult, and he finally looked back impatiently. This sight is doomed to his tragic future. When he saw Lucifer, he almost couldn't help showing an obsessed look, and he looked at Lucifer in a daze until the old housekeeper woke him up with an embarrassed cough. Suddenly, Earl Hobson's attitude changed dramatically. He looked soothed and looked at Lucifer seriously. "Sir, it's been bumpy and hard all the way, please come with me, I've prepared the most comfortable room for you." Pace Ya took a step forward silently, blocking Hobson's sight. "Thank you, Lord Earl, please lead the way." "How about preparing the most comfortable room? Didn't you just tell the housekeeper to arrange a place far away from him? This has become too fast." Not to mention Pace Ya, even the old housekeeper was stunned. He concealed it well, and glanced at the master quietly. Seeing that the master kept staring at Lucifer and ignored him, he wisely took the other paladins to the guest room to stay. Lucifer nodded slightly coldly. "I'm sorry to trouble the Count." "No trouble, no trouble." Hobson smiled. "It's my honor to serve the Son of God." As he said that, he suddenly showed a worried look, and tried to bypass Pace Ya and approach Lucifer. "Sir, are you injured? Is it serious?" Pace Ya's eyes narrowed like a shadow, and he blocked Hobson wherever he went. "It's not serious, it's not serious." Pace Ya said solemnly, "I will take good care of Lord Saint's son." Probably because he didn't want to lose his temper in front of Lucifer, Hobson finally stopped his rude behavior, and he snorted coldly with a gloomy face, "What a rude knight! Help Lord Saint's son, don't let Lord Lucifer hurt again." Then Hobson took the two upstairs and arranged Lucifer's room next to the master bedroom very sinisterly. He stood at the door and looked at Lucifer with a gentleman's smile. "Lord Lucifer, if you need anything, just shake the bell at the head of the bed, and there will be servants to serve you. You are really a caring noble." Lucifer didn't know whether to praise or ridicule. Afterwards, Hobson looked at Pace Ya, who was an eyesore, and said, "Your Excellency the Knight, your room is downstairs." Pace Ya looked up at Lucifer, who was being supported by him. Lucifer was looking at him tenderly, with a face of generosity and patience. Then he looked at Hobson, who was full of ill will. In the original book, at this time, Alice should be taken care of by Lucifer. The two of them lived in the same room. Hobson was jealous of Alice, but also did not dare to attack because Lucifer was there. But now, the plot has changed. Pace Ya let go of Lucifer, took 2 steps back, and bowed respectfully to him. "Master Holy Son, please wait a moment." "Pace Ya." Lucifer looked at him suspiciously. Pace Ya strode to the door and said to Hobson, "Lord Earl, the Holy Son needs to rest, please rest earlier." Hobson looked at him uncertainly. "I heard that Lord Holy Son has a very unique understanding of the Bright Bible, just as I want to know about the Bright Bible recently. I believe that Lord Holy Son will not refuse to let you feel it too." God's brilliance. He said that he had the idea of joining the church, and as a Holy Son, he would naturally not refuse. Lucifer agreed to explain the Bible for him in a very good-natured manner. Seeing this, Pace Ya had no choice but to frown. He watched Hobson walk into the room, and then Lucifer opened the Bible to explain it to him. Pace Ya took a deep breath, ran downstairs quickly, and entrusted Alice to the care of Buck in the Paladin team. Buck was gentle in character and handsome in appearance. For the frightened Alice, she was a protector who made her less afraid. Then Pace Ya ran inside the huge castle, grabbed a servant, begged him for a plate of ice, and hurried to Lucifer's room. When he pushed open the door, he saw that Hobson was still sitting across from him, just looking at Lucifer with fiery eyes, without directly moving his feet. To be honest, he was relieved. Pace Ya walked to Lucifer in a few steps, and behaved slightly to Hobson with a less standard etiquette, while he said politely, "Lord Count, it's already very late, Lord Holy Son has arrived at the right time." It's time for a break. You don't want to let the Lord continue to work with injuries, right? Hobson held a bright Bible in both hands, but he didn't read it at all. Hearing Paisia's words, he closed the book and looked at Lucifer with worried eyes. Lucifer, is the injury serious? Where is the injury? Lucifer smiled and shook his head. Don't worry about the count, it's not a serious injury. What? In less than half a day, the title has evolved from the Holy Son to Lucifer? Paisia gasped and couldn't help but worry about Lucifer's chastity. He glanced at Lucifer's forehead, quickly picked up a towel wrapped in ice and pressed it on his forehead. The red marks that were originally clear have actually disappeared long ago, but Paisia believed that although the external injuries healed quickly, the concussions on the inside would not heal easily. Lord Holy Son. Paisia held him firmly and insisted on applying ice cubes to the wound. Your injury is inside, you must rest. Hobson glanced at Paisia suspiciously, and seeing his serious expression, he couldn't help but begin to doubt his own eyes. It was obvious that Lucifer's head was intact. Lucifer, if you're in pain, I can also help you heal. Hobson said affectionately. Lucifer waved his hand and stood up. Paisia raised his hand along his height and still pressed it on his forehead. Lucifer said, Sir Count, don't be too polite, the Bible will be handed over to you, you can have a good meditation at night. Now, I want to rest. He said so, and Hobson had no choice but to maintain his gentlemanly demeanor and left reluctantly with a book. Paisia breathed a sigh of relief when the door was closed. Immediately afterwards, the tone was raised again, because Lucifer leaned back as if he had accidentally leaned into his arms. Paisia's sight was suddenly blocked by Lucifer's head and blonde hair, and he was a little overwhelmed. Lord Holy Son, how are you? It's nothing. Lucifer covered his heart and said with a hint of pity, it's just that I feel very tired, and the look in Lord Hobson's eyes makes me feel uncomfortable. Paisia suddenly became angry. It's too much. Even if it is a foundation, the basic law must be followed. Hobson is like this as soon as he comes up, and he deserves to be cannon fodder by Lucifer. Lord Holy Son, please rest assured, I will protect you. Paisia helped him to sit down on the chair, and then carefully applied ice to his forehead, which was completely invisible. With the ice applied, Paisia was shocked to find that Lucifer's forehead turned red again. He was silent for a moment and asked, Sir, how are you feeling? I feel better, thank you, Paisia. Lucifer looked at him moved. Paisia put down the towel wrapped in ice cubes, and quietly relieved, it was great, otherwise, Lucifer's forehead would be frostbitten if he continued to apply it. He began to pack up the towels and other things, and then bowed to Lucifer, then I will step back first, Lord Holy Son, may the God of Light bless you to have a sweet dream. Wait a minute. Lucifer suddenly stopped him, he frowned slightly, and there was a little sadness in his blue eyes. Lord Hobson's eyes make me a little scared, maybe you can stay with me tonight, Paisia. Spend the night with Lucifer? Although there shouldn't be a problem, but the current Lucifer looks extremely weak, and Alice doesn't live with him either. What if Hobson didn't follow him and decided to attack in the middle of the night? That's right, for the chastity of the Son of God. Paisia's eyes were firm and he slammed his chest. Don't worry, Lord Holy Son, I will definitely guard the door for you. With that said, he planned to go downstairs to hug a quilt and spend the night at Lucifer's door. Lucifer suddenly stood up and grabbed his wrist. He smiled and said, Why bother, you can sleep with me. Paisia pulled his hand away. No trouble, Lord Holy Son, your injury is the most serious. Paisia's sleeping appearance was not very honest, and if he fell asleep and kicked Lucifer out of bed, it would be bad. Paisia insisted on bringing a quilt, and Lucifer insisted not to let him sleep at the door. Paisia decided to make a floor next to Lucifer's bed with a firm determination. Thinking of the devil hiding in Earl Hobson's house, it was a little scary to sleep outside. However, after the negotiation, there are still some small problems between the two. The servant brought hot water for bathing. There is no doubt that when Lucifer was taking a bath, Paisya was going to guard the door for him, but when it was Paisya's turn, it was difficult to ask Lord Saint Sun to replace a little boy. Night guard. Paisya thought for a while, Lord Holy Sun, I'd better go downstairs to wash. Lucifer slowly raised his hands, folded them, and held them on his chest with a weak expression, in case Earl Hobson comes over suddenly. Ah! Paisya was stunned. I don't think Lord Count is interested in me. Lucifer suddenly came to me. Paisya. He gripped the edge of the tub, not knowing what to do for a moment. Why did the male lead become so delicate? So that he has to worry about the chastity of the male protagonist all the time? Paisya silently hammered a bathtub. Since this is the case, there is no other way. Lucifer said sympathetically, don't worry, I won't peek. How can you get leaders to back down for themselves? Paisya patted his chest, and said sternly, this is the room of Lord Holy Sun, Lord Holy Sun, please don't worry about me. As he said that, he took off his jacket and took off his shoes, and jumped into the water together with his shirt and pants. Whoops! Splashes everywhere. Lucifer looked at Paisya silently, his hands still weakly raised in front of his chest. He saw that the young man's not particularly strong body was wrapped in a translucent white shirt that was wet with water, which made it even more attractive when it was looming. It's just that the black-haired youth in the water didn't realize this. On the contrary, he thought he had made a very smart choice. Paisya smiled at Lucifer with relief. In this way, Lord Lucifer won't feel shy and restrained, right? Lucifer smiled and looked at Paisya. Does this mean that Paisya trusts him more? Although it is strange to take a bath with clothes on, but it is strange to be strange compared to being treated as a lecherous wolf by the male protagonist and then purified by a holy light. Paisya turned around and took a bath with his back to Lucifer. He made this choice for Lucifer's comfort, but he didn't like to wash like this. Moreover, he was a man, in front of the same sex. I still feel a little embarrassed to take a shower. Turn his back to him, so that Lucifer won't find himself embarrassed. He won't feel that he thinks badly about him. Life safety is guaranteed again. Perfect. Paisya quickly took a battle bath, and after coming out, he twisted the water on the wet clothes, then wiped his hair with a towel, and prepared to use the sword energy to dry the clothes. At this moment, Lucifer was sitting on the edge of the bed, and the white nightgown covered his arms and legs, revealing only his fair and beautiful hands and feet and his slender neck. He suddenly waved to Paisya. Paisya, come here. Yes, Lord Holy Sun. Paisya was still holding a wet towel in his hand. Lucifer, who had blonde hair scattered over his shoulders, raised his hand and touched his face. This time, Paisya's heart skipped a beat, and she looked at Lucifer in shock. Sir, what do you want? SHH. The warm light that refreshed and dissipated fatigue escaped from Lucifer's palm, then enveloped Paisya's head, and his black hair slowly dried. Paisya stood stiffly in front of him, leaning down slightly so that Lucifer could dry his hair. He looked very tired before. Should he really be the male protagonist, the recovery is fast. Paisya didn't dare to look around, staring at the ribbon in front of Lucifer's nightgown, thinking wildly. When the black hair became dry again, Lucifer's hand came down to his shoulders along his face, and he released the warmth gently, expelling the cold and wetness for Paisya. Paisya felt a little uncomfortable, but he held back and didn't show it. Don't think about Paisya. They are male protagonists without CP. They are only polite to girls and show no mercy to male nympho. Think about your life. However, even though Paisya could persuade Lucifer to help him simply and kindly, he still inevitably had a strange reaction. Anyone who is gently stroked from the shoulders by those hands, neither light nor heavy, with some itching and comfortable warmth, will inevitably have some reactions, right? It had nothing to do with whether Paisya liked him or not, it was purely physiological. Pei Xia subconsciously clamped her legs, her face tensed so that she would not be exposed. Sorry, I'm a little tired, so I'll slow down. When he said this, Lucifer was looking at Pei Xia with a frank and unselfish look. At this time, his hand was about to break through the dangerous position and had already reached Pei Xia's waist. Pei Xia was agitated, and hurriedly held his hand, pulled him away with a little force, and quickly reacted to let go of his hand. Pei Xia took a step back and bowed awkwardly with her legs between her legs. Thank you very much, Lord Holy Sun, for your help, it's enough. How come? Lucifer said with a smile, Pei Xia, God wants us to help each other, you don't need to be polite. Pei Xia's forehead was sweating anxiously. He held it back for a long time and said, Sir, you are already very tired. If there is a demon attack, it will be very dangerous. Please save your magic power. Lucifer chuckled lightly, his eyes slid across Pei Xia's slightly reddened and aggrieved face. He didn't push any further and let go of the poor knight. Well then, I accept your suggestion. Pei Xia breathed a sigh of relief, and hurriedly stood in the corner to dry his pants with his back to Lucifer. The poor clothes were soaked and dried 3 times in just half a day. If the clothes had soul, they would definitely ask Pei Xia, do you have any special hobbies? As the holy son of the god of light, Lucifer would praise the gods before going to bed. Pei Xia was not used to this, but he had to pretend to be around the holy sun. He put his hands together under his chin, nodded slightly and closed his eyes, pretending to be praying. To be honest, he is not a believer of the god of light. He joined the god of light just to get close to Lucifer. No. Why would I feel uncomfortable thinking about these things, and I was forced to be helpless? Pei Xia, who pretended to be pious, had to be really pious. He began to recite the Guangming Bible in his heart. After the small part of the Bible was recited, he finally returned to normal. After praying, Lucifer lay in the quilt. Pei Xia respectfully said good night to him, then blew out the oil lamp, and got into his quilt in the dark. It was really dangerous today, and he almost lost his temper in front of Lucifer. Thinking of the tragic end of the cannon fodder Pei Xia who was molested by Lucifer and purified by his holy light, Pei Xia couldn't help but be afraid. No, you have to be pure-hearted, and you must not let the male protagonist find out that he is gay. The next morning, after having breakfast with Lucifer, Pei Xia went downstairs to visit Alice. Alice still looked terrified, and she would feel more at ease when she stayed among the paladins. Because Lucifer decided to investigate who was lying about Alice and Hobson here, so they didn't leave, and the rainstorm still didn't stop, and they couldn't leave even if they wanted to. Paladins have a habit of practicing swords for a while in the morning. At this moment, it is raining heavily outside and they can't practice freely. They borrowed the living room on the first floor, put down their swords, and exercised with bare hands and bare fists. Lucifer stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and watched the rain outside. In order not to make Lucifer appear deserted, Pei Xia did not join the other paladins, but stood beside Lucifer and watched them silently. Look at those sturdy biceps, look at the sweat on the bronzed skin, look at those handsome manly paladins. Pei Xia touched her heart and felt that her aesthetic was firmer. Sure enough, he is a pure zero or should love macho. Pei Xia, what are you looking at? Beast boy. Lucifer. Pei Xia, it's what I should study. Is that so? Lucifer's tone was a little subtle. He raised his hand and patted Pei Xia's shoulder, squinting for some reason, and suddenly he curved his lips into a smile. Lucifer approached Pei Xia very kindly and said, Pei Xia, it's time to start the investigation. Earl Hobson didn't know what he was doing last night. He didn't get up until almost noon. He was pale and tall and handsome. When he came downstairs, Pei Xia had accompanied Lucifer to ask the servants in the castle. People. The servants agreed, saying that Alice stole the Count's gold, and they objected to Alice's statement that the maid was often missing. But the more unified their rhetoric, the more serious the problem. There was no need for Paisya, who had read the novel, to remind him that Lucifer could guess that the servants had been warned in advance. However, it is not enough to use the servants' words are exactly the same, but there is something strange. At least, some evidence must be found. Otherwise, Hobson can completely deny it. After Hobson went downstairs, he saw Lucifer standing beside Alice, frowning slightly and asking for details, and the old housekeeper sent him a look of success, and he couldn't help grinning. He strode up to Lucifer and bowed exaggeratedly, "My dear Lucifer, presumably, you already know my innocence enough. Please don't be deceived by this girl full of lies, I never lie to you, trust me." Hobson's arrogance was uncomfortable. Lucifer looked pale and was about to speak when Paisya frowned and stopped between the two. "Lord Earl Hobson, please don't call Lord Holy Son by his first name casually. You must be an educated person and should understand what respect is. Calling Lucifer's name directly?" Of course, but Hobson's call was too exaggerated and greasy, and Paisya felt a little disgusted when he heard it. Lucifer was well-bred, so he would definitely endure it before the other party went too far, but as his guardian knight, Paisya couldn't bear it. Hobson straightened up and told Paisya gloomily, "I naturally understand what respect for your excellency Lucifer is, but how about you, how dare you contradict a noble earl? Is this your upbringing? The cult of light does not divide the noble and the low according to the secular status." Hobson sneered, "Since this is the case, then I will challenge you, and the loser will apologize to the other party and admit that he is not worthy of calling Lucifer's name." What an arrogant and sad cannon fodder who was dazzled by Lucifer's beauty! "I accept your challenge, in the name of the Knight of the Holy Sun." The heavy rain was still pouring down outside, and the carefully arranged living room had been completely cluttered, just because a group of rude knights came here. And now, even the castle owner is going to join the ranks of violence and compete with those unwelcome guests, except Lucifer. The old butler covered his heart and stood beside him, looking worriedly at Lord Earl Hobson and the black-haired young knight. "God is above, bless the Count to win." "God!" Lord Earl lost. When Hobson's sword fell to the ground and Paisya's sword rested on his neck, let alone Hobson's face, the servants in the entire castle were stunned. First of all, let's not say that Earl Hobson is very strong. Just speaking of his identity, how could the servants think that a little knight would really dare to take his face? But the fact is that Paisya really dared. Paisya gasped lightly, her arms steady, "You lost, Lord Count." The roar of the paladins echoed all around. In fact, Hobson's strength is comparable to Paisya's. The reason why he lost so quickly in this gladiatorial fight was because he wanted to show his heroic appearance in front of Lucifer. To the feet. The flesh on Hobson's face twitched twice. He stared at Paisya gloomily, and after a long silence, he said, "One more time. Lord Count, I am willing to accept the bet." Paisya had no plans to accompany him to continue the trouble. In the end, Hobson still maintained the Count's dignity. He sneered and looked at Lucifer with unpredictable eyes. "Okay, since I lost, from now on, I will continue to honor Lucy. Phil is the son of God." After he finished speaking, he excused himself to be uncomfortable and went upstairs angrily. Paisya breathed a sigh of relief, put away the sword, and just about to turn around and say something flattering to Lucifer, such as "May the God of light bless you," when he felt a flower in front of his eyes, and a golden man rushed in front of him. It was Lucifer, who was frowning slightly, with a sad expression on his face, and held Paisya's face with both hands. Being caught off guard so close, Paisya suddenly became stupid, and his brain froze for a while, not knowing how to react at all. Fortunately, Lucifer looked at his face carefully with his blue eyes, and then spoke to break Paisya's predicament. "Paisya, how are you? Are you injured?" "Please rest assured, Lord Holy Son, there is a slight injury." He clenched his fists and couldn't help but said, "My face is not injured, you can release it." The magnified beauty of the prosperous age is simply another weapon, which made Paisya hold his breath unconsciously and did not dare to offend. The moment Lucifer finally let go of his hand and opened the distance, Paisya could not help but let out a sigh of relief. But then, his arm was pulled by Lucifer. "Let me see." Lucifer stared at the scratch with a few blood shots on it, and said solemnly, "Paisya, don't touch heavy objects again today." Paisya was stunned. "This injury? Isn't it?" "No." Lucifer raised a finger to his mouth with a worried look on his face. "Paisya, this is the injury you suffered for me, and I must be responsible for you." "Paisya, why does it feel strange?" Before he could figure it out, Lucifer took Paisya's hand and started walking upstairs. He strode a meteor, and the soft white hem fluttered like butterfly wings. Paisya couldn't help being pulled by him and staggered away. "Stand up." At this time, he suddenly realized that Lucifer's strength is not small. After all, he is also a man taller than him. "Please prepare bandages, scissors, hot water, and wound medicine." When passing by Hobson's housekeeper, Lucifer left a word on one side of his head decisively. Before the old housekeeper could react, he pulled Paisya. "Go upstairs." Downstairs, the old butler hesitated for a moment and looked at the paladin's onlookers. "Master Holy Son just said that he wanted bandages and wound medicine, is that true?" Buck folded his hands together and looked at Lucifer's back reverently. "Upstairs, as expected of the Son of God, he is really thoughtful." Mallory clenched his fists excitedly, and his eyes filled with tears. "The Son of God cares for his subordinates so much, he is indeed my loyal person." "Old butler, isn't the point that your holy son can use light magic but ask for medicine?" Upstairs, Paisya was dragged by Lucifer and staggered all the way into the room. The bumps made his head dizzy, and he could hardly think about what was going on for a while. It wasn't until he was gently thrown on the bed by Lucifer, lying on his back on the soft big bed. Paisya stared at the ceiling with flowers and angels carved on his head for a while, then he was about to get up with his arms up. "What's going on?" "It's just that the arm was slashed, not the leg." However, just as he stood up, he was nudged by a slender and graceful hand. With a puff, Paisya fell into the soft bed again. "Lord Holy Son, please don't worry, I'm really fine." Paisya turned his head helplessly and said to the blonde Holy Son standing beside the bed. However, instead of waiting for the son's understanding, he saw Lucifer sigh sadly. Lucifer's bad look on his face made Paisya's heart skip a beat, and even with him, he could not help but wonder if he was really seriously injured and died soon. Afterwards, Lucifer sat down beside Paisya. "This bed is not only soft, but also very elastic." When Lucifer sat down, the mattress shook and Paisya was carrying it. With a hand on his chest, Lucifer looked down at him sadly. His beautiful face was like a flower hit by frost in late autumn, haggard and pitiful, but also a sad beauty. "Paisya, haven't you found out yet? Lord Hobson, he has a devilish aura on him." "Paisya, hey!" He was dumbfounded, he really didn't notice it. Although Hobson behaved a little differently today, very impulsive and gloomy, but Paisya only thought that he was dazzled by Lucifer's beauty. It turns out. Has he begun to merge with the devil? Paisya vaguely remembered some of the contents of the original book. Hobson would feel anxious because of Lucifer's investigation, and the demon began to confuse Hobson after many days without sufficient blood supply, and eventually the two merged, purified by Lucifer. In the morning, Lucifer asked the servants in the castle and got unfavorable answers. At that time, Paisya was not worried that he would not be able to investigate the truth. Because Paisya knew that even if Lucifer did nothing but stay here, Hobson and the demon would kill themselves because of anxiety. But, this plot should not start in a few days. Is it because of the butterfly effect, so Hobson's plot has also changed a lot? Paisya was vaguely worried and looked at Lucifer. "Lord Holy Son, how are you doing? You must maintain sufficient magic power these few days, and don't be so tired that you will be turned against cannon fodder by cannon fodder." At this time, a servant knocked on the door and brought what Lucifer wanted. Lucifer smiled and opened the door to take it, and then locked the door tightly. He sat next to Paisya on the bed again, and Paisya tried to sit up. This time, he didn't stop him, but just pulled up Paisya's arm and gently stroked the wound with his white fingertips. "Paisya!" Lucifer called him softly, looking sad, as if he had discovered something very bad. "Your injury." Because of Lucifer's nervousness and seriousness, even Paisya began to worry and fear. His heart was pounding. "Lord Holy Son, please speak up if you have anything to say." "Alas!" Lucifer sighed, "your wound is stained with the breath of the devil, and needs to be treated very carefully, otherwise it will fester, and there is a mark of the devil on it. I am afraid that the devil will come to you." Paisya,